Hello, and welcome to Office Hours with Dr. Dan. I'm Dan. Today's topic is working for yourself. This podcast is an overview of things that you may need to think about before starting your own business. Not everything I cover today will apply to every business, and I may not address a topic that will be important to your business. My intent is to get you thinking about the steps you need to take to become self-employed so that you are prepared and ready to succeed if you decide to become your own boss. Notice that I said if you decide to become your own boss, not when you decide to become your own boss. I've been a self-employed or consulting engineer for over 15 years. I don't regret going out on my own, but it's not for everyone. Every job has stress. Being responsible for every aspect of a business can be more stressful than working for someone else, particularly if you are the sole or main source of income for your family or if you have employees depending on you for their livelihoods. I'm not here to push anyone to go out on their own or to stay with their current employer. I'm here to help people make an informed decision. There is a video on my YouTube channel, which is also called Office Hours with Dr. Dan, where I discuss my background. Some folks may find knowing how I got to where I'm at helpful in deciding whether or not they think I'm qualified to offer advice. That video was produced for college students and professors and focused more on my education and teaching background. I'm planning on producing a podcast that goes in depth on my work experience. In the meantime, please sit back and enjoy this first podcast from the Working for Yourself playlist. The first question you need to answer is, what is my business going to do? This is a key question. You need to have the answer to this down pat before getting too far down the road in the planning process. Running a painting business is different than doing accounting or developing apps, and you'll need to plan accordingly. Some folks may be fed up with working for someone else or not knowing if they'll have a job tomorrow. The lure of controlling your own destiny can be powerful, but you need to have a plan before you leave. This podcast assumes that you have some time to plan your escape and that you'll leave on your own terms. Unfortunately, you may go into work one day and be told you're out of a job. In that case, you'll have to accelerate the process. A word of advice: never burn your bridges when you leave a job, even if you are forced out. I left my employer on my terms, but I've continued to consult for them when they get too busy or can't bring in an engineer from another office. The extra money I've made from them over the years has been nice. I wouldn't have had that opportunity if I left on bad terms. Just so you know, my business is a sole proprietorship with no employees that provides forensic civil engineering services. A forensic engineer examines physical evidence and determines why something failed or how badly it was damaged. Most of my work is done for insurance companies, though I will occasionally perform investigations for individuals. Another question you need to be able to answer is, why should someone hire me? Being able to answer that question is important for marketing yourself to potential clients, particularly your first few clients. My answer stressed my experience as a construction inspector, which meant that I knew how things were supposed to be built. My experience working for my previous employer as a forensic civil engineer was also a topic I covered, as was my education, which included a bachelor's and master's degree in civil engineering, and then later a PhD. I also stressed my availability to perform inspections on nights and weekends, which was more convenient to the policyholders. Price wasn't something I stressed, though I did know what my hourly rate was going to be. Just because you are passionate about something does not mean that you are good enough at it to make a living. I enjoy what I do, but I'm not passionate about doing forensic investigations. If I won the lottery, I would stop doing the investigations and focus on writing my novels. I would say that I am passionate about teaching. That's why I teach review classes and make podcasts and YouTube videos. I don't want to be a full-time professor because the per-hour pay is much lower than what I currently make, and I don't want to do research. A hobby could become a business, but there is a difference between doing something as a diversion and doing it for a living. Some people really like to cook, and they are good at it, but that doesn't mean they should quit their job and open a restaurant or become a chef or cook. There's way more to running a restaurant than cooking. In fact, cooking may be the easiest part of running a restaurant. Maybe you're an amazing woodworker, but can you get enough work to pay your bills, and are you willing to mass produce your products rather than looking at them as pieces of art that take hours to individually handcraft? Has a stranger given you money for your product or service? Friends and family often buy something to support you and not hurt your feelings. Strangers are generally not concerned with your feelings. Can you start off doing the business part-time and then go full-time if things work out? or are you going to quit your job and start off full-time? It's probably financially safer to try moving from part-time to full-time. Working part-time lets you iron out the bugs while still receiving an income and benefits from your full-time job. Will you be able to balance the responsibilities of your main job, your side job, and your family while you're trying to get your business off the ground? It's probably your family life that will suffer, so you need to make sure your family is on board with what you are doing. If your marriage or relationship is on rocky ground already, the stress of trying to start a business could be the end. Full disclosure, I was single when I started my business, and I ran it for over 13 years before I got married. I couldn't start my business part-time because I would be doing work for the same clients that were using my employer. I did do my full-time job from my house for almost 9 months because the company's office flooded during Tropical Storm Allison. This is what led me to think about going out on my own. I saw how much more productive I could be without the distractions of meetings, phone calls, and office chit-chat. Don't get me wrong, I like the people I worked with and I still keep in contact with many of them. But there are a lot of things to sidetrack you if you work in an office. Like I said before, don't burn your bridges when you leave your full-time employer, especially if you are staying in the same industry. The people you work with will be around for a long time and you may end up doing business with them in the future. Also, your venture may not work out and you may need a reference from your old employer to get another full-time job. Do you have to be licensed to perform the work you want to do? Just because you could do something while you are employed by a company does not mean you will legally be allowed to offer the same service to the public when you are out on your own. Were you working under someone else's license who has taken responsibility for your work? Many plumbers, electricians, and engineers start off their careers working under someone with a license until they can take their own licensing exam. Do you have the qualifications, education, and experience needed to be allowed to take the test to become licensed? I know a licensed engineer who decided he wanted to open his own plumbing company. He hired a licensed plumber to work under until he had the required experience to take the plumbing test. He makes more money working for himself as a plumber than working for someone else as a licensed engineer. It can be tempting to take on work outside of your comfort zone if money is tight or when you're first starting out. Your clients aren't going to pay for your learning curve. You must be competitive to get business. Being competitive means that the quality of your work is in line with what other businesses in your area achieve and that your prices are similar to the going rate. You need to know what the going rates or common prices are without colluding with other companies. Colluding means getting together and agreeing to set prices across an industry. This stifles competition and it may be illegal and/or unethical. Just because you may be able to charge less for your work than your competitors doesn't mean that you should leave a lot of money on the table. It's easier to roll back your prices later if you find out you're charging too much and losing business than it is to raise your prices, especially for repeat customers. You may not be able to charge your client for all the hours that you work if you're still trying to get a hang of how things are done. You may have to look up or research a regulation or standard if you're doing something for the first time. After you get experience, you will know what the regulation or standard says and not have to spend time looking something up. Once you do the same or similar type of project a few times, you'll get a feel for how long it takes to get the job done, and you know where the potential pitfalls lie. If you're not familiar with something, you may grossly underestimate how much time it takes to get your work done. Be careful about agreeing to do something on a fixed price or lump sum basis. This may be the way things are done in your industry, and that's how you'll have to run your business, but you'll need to be careful. The less experience you have in an area, the more likely it is that you will lose money on the jobs you get because you aren't charging enough, or you won't get jobs because you are charging too much. It can be very important to have a good contract that spells out the limitations of your work in case unforeseen conditions occur. For example, what happens if you are demoing an area and asbestos is found? Who is going to pay for the extra cost of removing the asbestos and for the delay in getting your work done? What happens if the client doesn't do something they're supposed to do, like getting a variance for the city, and your start date is delayed, or you have to stop work after you've already started? What if the information your client initially provided you is incorrect, and the work you performed has to be redone? Contracts may not be a big deal if everything goes right. They may be the difference between staying in business or going bankrupt if things go wrong. An experienced client is not going to let you make a huge profit off a job that they know is simple, but they may try to screw you into doing a complicated job on the cheap. Be especially careful if the client has a long-standing relationship with a competitor and they're not using that competitor for this job. If all your competitors are steering clear of a particular job or particular client, it's probably a sign that you should too. Knowing when to say no to a job can be more important than knowing when to say yes. Better to say no to a questionable job than to end up losing money or getting sued. It's easy to get sued even if you are completely 100% totally not at fault. Once you get sued, you have to spend time and money fighting the suit. Having enough money set aside makes it easier to say no to questionable jobs during lean times. You need to know how much money you need to make each week, month, or year to pay your bills and stay in business. We'll go much deeper into this subject in a future podcast, but you need to have a reasonable idea of how much you need to bring in to survive. Don't forget that every dollar your company takes in is not yours to do with as you please. You have to pay your suppliers, employees, and your taxes before you pay yourself. You also need to safeguard your reputation and the reputation of your company. Social media makes it easier for customers to complain. Your ability to fight back for what you consider undeserved criticism varies with location and is probably a losing battle. That said, be careful about getting pressured into reducing your price or offering a refund to a client to avoid a negative review. You don't want word to get out that you'll roll over if someone threatens you with a negative review. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself and your business against unethical people trying to extort something from you. Someone once called me and asked me to say in court that their forging of an inspection report, while wrong, did not endanger public safety. I told them I wouldn't do that and that I didn't know anyone who would. Even if there wasn't a safety issue, I didn't want my name associated with defending a forger. The person didn't tell me their name or who gave them my name. If I had found out who recommended me to the forger, I would have let them know not to do it again. On a similar note, beware of doing jobs for friends and families. You are in business to make a living. Giving your work away or turning away paying work to do favors for people you know could hurt your business. Your real friends aren't going to expect you to do something for free or at a ridiculously reduced price. When deciding to do a job, you need to look at the reputation of the potential client. Do they like to sue people? If they are sue happy, what would keep them from suing you? Maybe you have the contract language on your side, but you can still get sued and have to pay to defend yourself. Even if you have insurance to protect you if you get sued, there's still a deductible. Maybe you get your money back if you win the case, maybe not. There is such a thing as guilt by association. If you get the reputation for working for one type of client, others in that field may avoid you. For example, maybe you agree to do roofing work for a developer with a reputation for cutting corners. Even if you do quality work for that developer, other developers may hesitate to use you on their projects. Does the client pay their bills in a timely manner? Try to get some of your money up front if there's a doubt in your client's ability to pay. If the client won't pay you something up front, you need to reconsider working for them. You should at least get enough money to cover the materials you are getting from other people. This way, if things go south, you can at least still pay your suppliers. If you don't pay your suppliers or subcontractors on time, word will get around and you will have difficulty finding people to sell you materials on credit or work for you. Having one client that accounts for most of your business is risky. What if they go out of business or decide to use someone else? It can be a balancing act on whether having a few clients or a lot of clients is best for your business. More clients can lead to higher administrative costs that you have to roll into your hourly rate or wrap into your contract price. Having fewer clients can allow you to develop a closer relationship with those clients, which can help you anticipate and meet their needs. If you do go out on your own, you need to have an idea of how many hours a week you want to work. Someone else set those expectations when you were working for a company. Now that you're out on your own, you have a much greater say in when and how much you work. Should you be working 60 plus hours a week if one of the reasons you went out on your own is to spend more time with your family? You may need to work a lot of hours when you get started, but if you've been in business for a couple of years and are still working like a dog, it's time to reevaluate your priorities or to get help. I tend to work more hours than usual after hurricanes. The work is only going to be there for a limited amount of time and then it's gone. I dropped 2 of my PhD classes to avoid turning away work after a hurricane. I was able to pick those classes up later when work slowed down. There's almost always something you could be doing for the business. Sometimes you just have to say you're done for now and stop working. I think it was the late Dr. Stephen Covey who said, "Did anyone ever wish on their deathbed that they'd spent more time at the office?" If you're working from home most of the time in your new business, then you get back whatever time you spent commuting to your old job. What are you going to do with this extra time? I've published 2 novels, earned my PhD, and was an adjunct professor for 5 years. I also serve on 2 professional committees related to soils and foundations and teach review courses for the civil engineering licensing exams. Serving on the committees is voluntary, but I get paid very nicely to teach the review classes. I would not have been able to do some of these things if I still worked for someone else. It can be handy when you first start your business to track your time so you know how much time you are spending doing various aspects of the business, including non-billable activities like writing proposals, paying bills, or marketing. Tracking your time also lets you know how much time you are spending on non-work activities like surfing the internet. A quick break to check your email can quickly devolve into several hours of wasted time if you're not careful. Time tracking may provide insight into areas you can contract out to someone else. You need to know what your hourly rate is to be able to make an educated determination if it is cost effective to outsource some of your work or to hire an employee. If you bill by the hour, you already know what your hourly rate is. If you bill by the job, then you need to keep track of all the time you spent working on a project and divide that into the net income you made on that project. You need to include the time you spent planning the job, traveling to and from the job site, and running errands related to that job. Not every hour you work can be attached to a specific job. Filing monthly sales tax returns, shopping for office supplies, marketing, and completing continuing education classes are actions that take time but aren't related to a specific job. You need to realize that your business can change over time. Maybe you start out as a sole proprietorship, but the company grows to where it makes sense to register as a corporation. Perhaps you start out with 1 or 2 rental properties, but the number grows to 30 or 40 over time. Your potential liability is much greater with more properties, and you need to take steps to protect your personal assets. This is the time where you really need to get a business lawyer involved if you haven't already. You might have started off doing all the work yourself, but get so busy that things are falling through the cracks, or you never get to spend time with your family. You don't have to hire full or part-time employees to get help. You can contract out parts of your business. I have always had 1 or 2 people who do my AutoCAD work for me. I email them the work and snail mail them a check. They email me back the completed jobs, and my accountant sends them a 1099 for their taxes at the end of the year. I'm old enough that I learned how to draft with a T-square and a straight edge. I can make changes to an existing AutoCAD file and print out the drawings, but starting with a blank screen and getting to a final product is beyond my skill level, and I have no desire to learn how to do that. Besides, my clients are paying me to perform engineering analysis, not do AutoCAD. I've also always used an accountant to do my taxes. I have better things to do than to try to keep up with the ever-changing U.S. tax code. Since I am a sole proprietorship, my business tax return and my federal tax return are one and the same. I have to file quarterly payments for income tax, Social Security, and Medicare taxes. Any refund that I might have coming from the IRS always gets applied to my first quarter payment for the next tax year. Don't be sloppy with your taxes. Remember, Al Capone went to jail for income tax evasion, not murder. Maybe the industry you are in undergoes a fundamental change and you need to branch out into other areas if you want to stay self-employed. How many video rental stores do you see around anymore? I can remember when there was some type of video rental place in almost every strip mall. Now people get their movies from a vending machine or they stream them. We've covered a lot of ground in this podcast, and there are still many more topics to discuss. Hopefully I've answered some of the questions you have about starting your own business and made you aware of some of the areas that you hadn't thought about. I'm going to delve deeper into these topics and others in future podcasts. Until then, take care, and I'll see you next time.